Yeah, okay. I'm a lecturer at the University of Iceland, and the program I'm going to show you now is actually used there. So let me just start. We call it the Icelandic Village, participating in real-life interaction in Icelandic. So I have been teaching Icelandic at the University of Iceland for 20 years. And the problem was always that our students, even though they were studying in Iceland, they didn't speak, maybe for the first year, except to the teachers. So we tried all kinds of things to get them to use the language outside of the classroom, but the results were so-and-so. And many of them didn't want to or didn't dare and had sort of bad experience. They were responded to in English. So in my PhD, I did a research on language learning in the wild. It was a learner of Icelandic, and I wanted to know what she did outside of the classroom to support her learning in Icelandic. And she used all kinds of methods and ways to get the locals to speak in Icelandic with her. And so I wanted to use her methods to teach to my students for them to do the same. And the original idea was to help them use Icelandic in their daily life where they would actually go anyway. Maybe in the bakery to buy bread, do that in Icelandic. So the program Icelandic Village aims at building a link between the classroom and the outside world. So both components are important. We have the teachers and we have the outside world. The Icelandic Village is sort of a stepping stone between the two. We created a safe environment for the learners to speak the language in order for them to have a positive first experience, and that's extremely important. Because a positive first experience is going to help them continue, whereas a negative one is going to set them back months, as you may know. So, let me see. So what we did, we had an arrangement with some companies and institutions at the university campus and downtown Reykjavik. And what we asked them to do was, please speak Icelandic to the learners here. Don't switch to English. That was the only thing we asked them to do. And they did. And finally, we were awarded the European language label for this program, 2013 to 2015, and made us very proud. So let's see. This is not a one-man project or a one-woman project at all. You have an idea, but in order for that idea to work and become something, I actually got help and participation from universities in other countries, in the Nordic countries. So University of Southern Denmark, we had some researchers and experts from there. From Sweden, we had experts in interactive design. And then finally we had help from the Institute of the Arts in Iceland. So we had people coming from different directions to this project of helping the students to speak the language outside of the classroom. And that was wonderful to hear different perspectives from people that were all interested in the same thing, but coming from different directions. Okay. And the companies that we made this agreement with were some bakeries in Iceland, the swimming pool, cafes, university bookstore, a bookstore downtown, and everybody's favorite was the library downtown, because they're patient and then they have time and they're interested. Whereas the bakery people would, I mean, they were wonderful in doing this in Icelandic, but they were also selling bread. That's their main project. Okay. So this project was, I have to say, a great success. And this is what the students have to say. We made a survey at the end of the pilot period. We did a pilot study first. And the students, between 84 and 90% of the students were happy with this. They thought it helped them in their pronunciation, in speaking, and in terms of self-confidence, which is extremely important. So this is what they had to say. Basically that the good thing about this was that they were forced to speak Icelandic outside of the classroom and use what they had learned in class. And they sort of worked up the courage to speak Icelandic, and courage is a very important factor here, as everybody probably knows. And also they had to speak Icelandic in normal situations, not in the classroom with the teacher. Teacher is very important, but ultimately what people want to do with their language that they're learning is use it outside of the classroom, right? Yeah. And they were happy to have a place to start learning. So even if they were doing real business, the staff knew that they were learning the language, so instead of switching to English, which would be the normal thing to do in order to speed up the business transaction, they spoke Icelandic. Okay. Yeah, and another thing that's very important, as I told you in the beginning, sometimes in the first year of learning Icelandic, they didn't dare to say anything outside of the classroom. In the Icelandic Village, they start speaking outside of the classroom in the first week. So that's a great difference. And we have some pictures of some helpers. One of them was my student in Icelandic as a second language, Edvardas. And then we have Victoria, who was an art student. And Victoria actually designed the logo. Okay. Now to the design. So what we had was this idea to create a place for them to speak the language outside of the classroom. But the challenge was, how do we connect that to the classroom? So we had several workshops to figure this out, and this is the result. You can see the infinity sign here. So we have the classroom is one, we have the Icelandic Village, homework, and the final destination is outside to the wild. So let me show you how this works. So we created steps for this to work. So the first lesson is in the classroom with the teacher. He explains the pedagogical process. and prepares the students for the first visit to the Icelandic Village. Okay. So in the first visit, they're not supposed to do anything, they're not supposed to buy anything. I mean, they can, but what they're supposed to do is open their eyes and ears to listen to what's going on in this place, and open their eyes to look at all the language that is all around. For example, in the bakery, there are signs, labels on the food, so you can actually, you can actually read it. And they were supposed to write down some words and vocabulary and collect. We call it fishing. They were going to fish for words and phrases and get familiarized with this place. How does this work? Listen to the clerk and listen to the customers. So they stayed there for maybe half an hour, and let me show you a video of that. So the next step is going back to the classroom with what they have caught in the bakery, for example, all the words and vocabulary. And in the classroom, they work with the teacher to prepare their actual business visit, where they go and they ask for things in Icelandic and they understand what's going on. So let me show you a video from that. Yeah, this is a sort of a form that they write down the possible interaction that's going to happen, keywords and other things, and then they role play. Okay, moment of truth. Now to the actual visit to the bakery. It's actually a café, to do a real life transaction, buy coffee in Icelandic, and one of the things that he asks for is a permission to record the interaction.
Okay.
Skal vi få det latte?
Heidskrem.
Ja.
Hvað kostar lítið bóttið?
Við erum bara með eina stærð
Já.
og það kostar 535.
Ok. Ég að kaupa þetta.
Já, drekka hér.
Já.
Það er 535.
Ok. Kort? Já.
Og bara sér.
Já.
Viltu fá þig?
Já.
Þú þarft ekki skrifa. Hvað í þessa sjávarda? Ég ætla að fá ein sjávarda. Já. Eitthvað að segja fyrir? Nei, takk.
And these students had been in Iceland for a week. Can you believe that? I mean, that was, for us, the teachers, this was mind-blowing that they could do this. But they did. So what they did with the next step was to go home with the recording of the interaction, listen to it, and try to figure out, okay, how did this go, any problems? And the next thing would be to go to the classroom and share information. They would go to the same place, all of the students, and then they would come back and sort of share information and talk about problems and how they could be solved.
Góðan daginn. Get ég aðstoðað?
Já, ég hef verið á Íslandi í viku og núna ætla ég að fá bókasamskipteini.
Frábært. Þá skrifir þú nafnið þitt og netfangið þitt. Hvaðan ertu?
Ég er frá Finnlandi, ég er frá íslensku þorpinu og ég ætla að læra íslensku.
Allt í lagi. Þú talar gott íslensku.
Góðan daginn.
Góðan dag. Ég er að fá ett brauð, grófbrauð.
Já,
Vill du skæra það?
já,
Mjög gott.
læra.
Nei takk.
Ég ætla að fá skipteini. Já, það kostar 1600 krónur. Allt í lagi. Café. Takk fyrir, það er skipteini. Takk fyrir. Áttu nýja bókina eftir Nesbø? Nei, því miður, hún er ekki enn komin inn.
Okay. So this is the pedagogical process. As you can see, the steps and the link between the classroom and the outside world. The role of the teacher is very important here, because one of the complaints that we hear from students is that I feel like I'm a 2-year-old when I speak Icelandic. So one of the things that we're trying to do with the Icelandic Village, and the teacher's role is to make sure, bless you, again, is to make sure that they speak like adults, and that's a big advantage. Okay. So we have a few companies in the, this is a sort of a course at the university, so I think we have about 5 companies, and we always do the same thing. So the students feel safe and they can do this in adult language. Okay. So, as I told you in the beginning, the Icelandic Village is a stepping stone between the classroom and the wild, the real life. And so what we expected was that, okay, we are probably going to go through all the 5 companies before they go out into the wild. But no. What happened was, after the first experience, positive experience, they were unstoppable. They were all over the place, speaking Icelandic, doing things in Icelandic. We couldn't believe it. And a video I'm going to show you now is from a field trip where they were supposed to look at some historical things or nature, and they were in the gift shop where they also sell hot dogs and things. And they all ordered their meal or their hot dogs and coffee in Icelandic, much to our surprise.
Kaffe og taka med. Det var meget spændende. Det var sådan en gammel legende om en tyr og en ørn. Det var mjølk. Ja. Tak for det.
Hér er mjólk ef þú vilt.
Tak.
Svo.
Yes, I did one.
Okay. So this is how the Icelandic Village works, and as I said, it's been a great success, but I mean, it's not all. We also have some challenges that I'm going to tell you about now. When we designed this, we imagined a group of maybe 15 students, possibly 20, but we have 150, which is far more. I mean, for example, our favorite place, the library, threatened to pull out because they had 150 students coming, asking the same thing. I mean, so we're actually still working on that. It's a problem. I mean, for this project, we didn't expect that many. And also, one of the things we discovered was that we designed this for university students, for professional students who know how to study. We tried to use this method for immigrants in Iceland, and some of them are educated and some not. And it turned out that we needed to drastically change the design in order to accommodate those needs. For example, to send them out into the bakery to open their eyes and ears. No. They didn't know what we were asking them to do, what they were supposed to do. So it ended up that the teacher went with them, took them to the place and said, okay, what you do here is this, you write this down, you listen to this, you stand here and sort of feel the atmosphere. So this is actually being used for immigrants, but as I said, this program is for educated students professional students who know what learning is about. Okay. Another thing, this program is for beginners in the language, in order for them to sort of start speaking, using service encounters for their language use and doing their business in the language. And it's a feeling of success when that works for every student. But what we wanted to do also, we wanted to find a way to engage them in a longer conversation, longer than one bread, please. Thank you. Yes, goodbye. So everybody's busy. Have you noticed that? Yeah. So people their own age, people like 20, 25, they're busy. They're in school, they're working, whatever. So we thought, well, who has time and who speaks Icelandic? Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. So what we did was we made an agreement with activity centers for elderly people in Iceland, in Reykjavik. And And we used the Icelandic Village pedagogy in a way that we prepared them in the classroom for how to approach the elderly and what to talk about, and help them to understand what would happen. And so what we did first in the classroom, we sort of made 25 possible questions to ask. So the first visit is always like an interview more than a real regular interaction. And we discussed with the students what is appropriate to ask, what don't you ask about, all kinds of these. But they're people, they're sensitive, they know. So we sent them twice to talk to the same person, 2 weeks apart maybe. So they went and found their elderly person, and then 2 weeks later they went again. And that time was totally different than the first time, because now they knew each other, and they would, for example, the time that they would talk about in the first visit would be sort of the whole life. They would tell their life story, what they did when they were young, and so on. But in the second visit, the time they had together was the time between the visits. So what did you do this week? Oh, you went to the hairdressers, okay. So, yeah, I went to the movies. So that was more of a discussion. And so our students, they managed to build friendships with those people. One guy learned to knit an Icelandic sweater there, and some of the old people, they invited the students to their house and introduced them to the family and so on. But again, 150 students, we only have so many elderly people here. So first we had 3 sort of stations or activity centers, and that was fine, but with the increased number of students, it was crowded. So, but then we started to get calls from other activity centers that we hadn't contacted. Can we have our students visits too? And so this became sort of known to the elderly, and everybody wanted to participate. I mean, it was a win-win situation. Elderly people in Iceland and the Western world, I think, are bored mainly. So to get, it's like a breath of fresh air to get the students to come and talk about their culture and showing pictures and all kinds of stuff. And they even brought something to eat or to drink. But the activity centers, they were extremely nice because, I mean, they sort of welcomed our students. They offered them coffee, and so it was a very nice experience for them. But the constantly increased number of students is an issue, and we haven't been able to sort of figure out what to do, because we don't want to overload those places, especially not the library, which we like very much. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and the recordings that they do in the Icelandic Village when they go to the places, and also when they talk to the old people, they return to us and we use it for research. So we have both video and audio recordings of all the interaction that's going on. Unfortunately, we don't have the manpower to listen and analyze all those recordings yet, but I hope that time will come. Okay. Yeah, I think that was, yeah. Is it too short? Okay.
Hello, I was curious, when you send your students into the wild as you say.
Yeah.
Have you noticed they're treated differently in Reykjavik as opposed to smaller cities like Selfoss around the country, or does it really doesn't matter? I mean, by the locals, I mean.
You mean outside of the?
Outside of the capital, are they treated differently in the smaller cities, the rural areas, or it's about the same? Doesn't really matter as far as you're teaching?
Well, times have changed in Iceland, as you may have heard, with all the numbers of tourists. So I have not seen that they're treated any differently in Reykjavik or other places. They haven't told us, so we don't know. Thank you for the question.
Hi. How long was the program? Was it a year or?
Oh, this program?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's this is a half year.
Oh, it's a half a year.
Half a year, yeah.
And how much Icelandic do they actually know at the end of a half a year program?
Well, they can speak outside of the classroom. They can do the business that they need to for the daily life purpose, and they can engage in a little bit longer conversations. So they are able to do and understand quite a lot. I mean, Icelandic is not any more difficult than other languages to learn. So, and what happens as soon as they get the taste of it, that they actually learn by doing. Yeah. So quite a lot, I would say, if that's a good answer.
Hello, thank you very much for your very interesting talk. I'm here.
Thank you.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay.
See you.
Right. I have a comment and a question. My comment would be, I was really surprised at how painstaking and iterative the process was at first, because thinking of it from the perspective of a self-learner, I would have just taken a phrase book, learned 10, 12, 20 phrases, and then gone into the shop and asked those questions and made that transaction. So why is it so painstaking? Or I found it painstaking, but it was only the first week, so it was quite good anyway. And now my question, when they went out into the wild, into real life situations, were they not faced with the very same problem of people talking back to them in English?
Okay. The first comment or question about the painstaking thing, not all students are like you. They are 20, they're shy, and a bad experience once is going to set them back, as I said. And even though they're professional learners, and you never know what you can get on Facebook. You need a teacher to guide you, actually. So as a part of a program, it's necessary for them to do it like this. Everybody likes this process. I don't think it's painstaking, actually. It's they're learning how to do things as adults in a way that they're still beginners, though. Yeah. The other thing, yes, they're faced with the same thing that people want to switch to English. But one of the things that I did a research on in my PhD was actually this. Anna, who was my focal research subject, she was faced with this often. She would say something in Icelandic, the Icelander would respond in English. So she came up with a method, and this method we teach all our students. Before the actual business transaction starts, they make a language contract with the clerk. So they say something like, are you willing to do this in Icelandic? And when they do that, the clerk is co-responsible for this being in Icelandic. And of course, those people who are Icelandic and love the language, they're willing to do that. even though it costs a few seconds of time that other people have to wait. But this is the way we teach them to react. And the response is always nice. People, yeah. Thank you for the question and comment.
Þakka þér fyrir söguna. Thank you very, very much for that wonderful presentation. I'm here. Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. Really, really interesting. I've got, I think, some comments and possibly some questions. You were talking about confidence.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that creates confidence is a kind of a virtuous circle where the more confident you become, the less temptation there is for the other speaker to answer in English. Mm-hmm. That if you, once the students can go up and speak Icelandic, but not speak it hesitantly, the natural response from the native speaker is to respond in their own language. So I think that's an important thing. I'm also thinking about like language policy. I mean, one of the things I think that struck us all being in Iceland is this wonderful pride that people have in the language.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there are ways of using that in kind of a publicity campaign to say, share the language with visitors. Say hello, thank you, goodbye in Icelandic, no matter what other language you're speaking to the people in. To have that kind of campaign. And I'm thinking about places like Hawaii. Hawaiian is a very, very endangered language.
Yeah, I know.
But everyone who goes there learns mahalo and aloha. Hello, goodbye, and thank you. Because that's how you're greeted. You go into a shop, they say aloha. You buy something, they say mahalo.
See, yeah.
And I think that kind of, a publicity campaign that says, let's at least say, Godandayin, tak, less, to everyone.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Thank you.
And I actually was in Hawaii for 5 months this spring, so I learned the mahalo and aloha too. And the sad thing about Hawaiian is that the language is basically gone. But Icelandic is very much alive. And I think that to pick up the thread from the last speaker about language policy, what I think we need to do is get young people to support Icelandic as the language of communication, and our foreigners, people that move here, want to live here, we need to teach them the language. We need to make them want to learn the language. And especially what has happened in the last few years is that people come here maybe for a short time to work in a café or a bakery or something, and they don't speak the language and they don't intend to learn because they're here for 4 months. And the owners or the people who own the businesses, they're not interested in putting money into teaching those people Icelandic, so the government has to step in here. Thank you very much for the comments and questions.
Góðan daginn.
Góðan daginn.
Gaman að sjá þig aftur.
Já, sömuleiðis.
Ég á öðru námi.
Já.
Í BA námskeiðinni. Og ég var að hugsa, ætlar þú að nota þessi aðferð aftur? Til dæmis, hefur þú hugsað kannski að skipta fólk frá námskeiði í 3 eða kannski 4 hópa og senda þau aftur einhver staðar til þess að æfa sig og sækja upplýsingar.
Ég skil ekki alveg. Í staðinn fyrir að senda einn og einn, að senda þau í hópum?
Já, ég veit að við erum 120 eða 130 núna í námskeiði, en væri það ekki notanleg að skipta okkur í hópa og síðan nota þessa aðferð aftur og senda okkur einhver staðar.
Ertu í BA-náminu?
Já.
Já, ok. Jú, ertu á öðru ári?
Hvað?
Ertu á öðru ári?
Já.
Já, ok. Já, þetta góð hugmynd. Við höfum ekki spáð í það, nei. Takk fyrir.
Hi.
Hi.
I'd love to pick up a little bit on a thread you were talking about towards the end there, and through some of these questions about, you mentioned, a bad experience trying this stuff out can sometimes set a student back considerably.
Yeah.
And even I consider myself a pretty resilient person, and I also love languages and love going through all this. But even I feel pretty discouraged emotionally when I try to, say something I've learned in Icelandic or any other language to a native speaker, and they look at me like, I don't know, like I'm from Mars.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear you talk about how you prepare your students emotionally to be resilient through those moments and to deal with the inevitable moments where they're completely not understood or misunderstood.
Thank you for the comment. I can respond with a story. We love to tell stories, as you may know. Before the Icelandic Village was established, I used to send my students to the cafeteria and told them, go and buy coffee and tea in Icelandic. And then they came back, frustrated and angry, and said, she didn't understand us. I said, really? Why? What did you say? And they told me they were buying tea, and this woman sells coffee and tea. And they said something like, ég ætla að fá te. Ég ætla að fá te. And she looked at them like they were aliens. She had no idea what they were asking. So what I taught them to do was to lengthen the vowel. Te. So it was in the pronunciation that she didn't get it. So we teach them, we prepare them with phrases and also the way to say it. It's not enough to read something, you need to know where to put the emphasis and so on. Another example is that the phrase that we use for making a purchase in Icelandic is ég ætla að fá. Ætla means intent. And our students tend to think this is rude to say that. And I tell them, well, it's rude if you put the emphasis on ætla. I intend to get. So I tell them to put the emphasis on the thing that they want. So they say, ég ætla að fá kaffi. And that's a totally different thing. So we teach them, we try to sort of coach them in pronunciation and the correct phrases to use. And then, of course, going to the safe place, which is the Icelandic Village, makes all the difference. They know that the people, they don't have to negotiate yet. We did that for them. So if they try to speak Icelandic, that's fine. They will be responded to in the language. Thank you very much for the comments, questions.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you again for a very informative speech, and congratulations on the European recognition of your program.
Thank you.
I just wondered if the Icelandic Village idea had been used anywhere else in the world, and what lessons were learned from that.
Yep. Thank you for the question. As we speak, the Icelandic Village is being set up in Germany. And it was a student who was also a teacher who came to Iceland to learn Icelandic and went through the Icelandic Village and wanted to use it in her hometown. So the Icelandic Village is called Zu Hause im Dortmund in Germany. So yeah, we're hoping that this will spread. That would be the ideal thing. I mean, I would myself love to participate in something like this, to be able to speak French in France, etc. But we'll see. Thank you.
I was wondering how the contact was with businesses you are working with. Like, do you have chats with them? How it's going? Do you prepare them somehow? Do you pay them? Like, is it difficult to get businesses engaged in this type of thing?
We don't pay them. We negotiate with the owners, who negotiates with the staff, how we prepare them. This is actually, we went in many circles in how to prepare the stuff, and our first idea was to give them a crash course in phonetics. Fortunately, we didn't. I mean, we said, okay, we don't want to scare them. There's no need. So the only thing we asked them to do was speak Icelandic, don't switch to English. Most of the companies were positive to this idea. This was before the tourist explosion. Yeah. So now, for example, now if you go downtown, the first language people are going to use when they speak to you is English, actually, not Icelandic. So I think more negotiation is necessary, both for involving the businesses and also for the students to speak the language. And then there's the problem that not all clerks speak Icelandic. But then our favorite bakery, everybody goes to, there are sort of assigned personnel that do this. They participate in the village, so when somebody comes from the Icelandic village, they sort of appear to take the business call.
So please do give a round of applause. It's well deserved. Thank you very much. Thank you.